Good afternoon. I am Benjamin Espino, the manager of the Latino Cultural Center, and I'm here to talk about the 4th annual ART214. So back in 2018, our Mayor Mike Rawlings declared April to be Dallas Arts Month. And so Dallas Arts Month had grown out of what we had called Dallas Arts Week. And so because of the diversity and the beauty of the vibrancy of our arts and cultural scene, we wanted to make sure that we included visual artists as part of Dallas Arts Month. So we have 4 neighborhood cultural centers. I'm here at the Bathhouse Cultural Center, which also happens to be the first Art Deco building in Dallas that was built in 1930. As I mentioned, I'm the manager of the Latino Cultural Center, which opened in 2003 and it was designed by Ricardo Legorreta. And the Oak Cliff Cultural Center is our 3rd neighborhood cultural center located in Oak Cliff, in West Jefferson, and then South Dallas Cultural Center, which originally was part of the City Arts program back in the 80s, late 80s. Now, all 4 cultural centers had never collaborated on a visual arts exhibit, so this idea of creating ART214 was to engage our visual arts community. As I said, this is our 4th year, and so we've been able to show over several thousand pieces of art at the 4 cultural centers, bringing highlight to our visual arts community. And while I reference 4 neighborhood cultural centers, actually we have a 5th, which is really a hybrid between a performance hall, but they also have a gallery space that we run, which is called Moody Performance Hall, which is actually, prior to that, was called City Performance Hall, which was the city's contribution to the arts district for the master plan for the AT&T Performing Arts Center. Also here to speak more about ART214 are our curator for this year's exhibit, which was actually in 2020, but we were able to do it in 2021, Susan Leckie. Also here with us this afternoon is one of our jurors, Jackie Forsher, and they're going to be able to talk about Susan's curatorial vision at the 4 cultural centers and Jackie's selection process as a juror. Thank you so much for being with us. As we move back into a hybrid and in-person model, we are all delighted and excited, and I know that we will all be looking forward to having in-person, but also virtual events where you can feel comfortable at home, perhaps watching part of this, or coming out to the beautiful Bathhouse Cultural Center, which we all know has one of the best and most amazing sunsets in Dallas. We're back here again. I'm here with Susan Leckie, who is actually the curator of ART214. As I said originally, we had planned the exhibit for 2020. Susan was able to visit each center and look at a different gallery plan for each center. Susan herself is actually a visual artist by training. Susan went to school on the West Coast, and arguably one of the best campuses that I think is visually stunning in its own right is the University of Southern California. Susan, can you tell us a little bit about your curatorial process? Because when you think about the 4 cultural centers, each center was built as a different purpose except for the Latino Cultural Center, but obviously I'm biased that our gallery space was designed as a main gallery space. But when you have such a beautiful space like the Bathhouse Cultural Center or the Art Deco Beck Gallery at South Dallas Cultural Center, well, how were you thinking of laying the show out?
Well, I thought of the area of the audience that comes to these different centers. And as you said, I did go again. I've been to all of them many times, but I went and re-looked at them so that I would have a better idea because of the space limitations of some. The Oak Cliff being very small compared to the South Dallas or the Latino Center. And the situation at the Moody was that only works that could be hung on a wall could not have any sculpture. And since they had to be hung in a very particular way, it eliminated things that would be 3-dimensional and difficult to handle. So keeping that in mind, looking at the work, and I didn't see the actual work, but Enrique gave me photographs and the dimensions and the media of all the works. And I pulled out my table at home to simulate the galleries and around the house and put all the works out to look at them and see how they would fit and go together. And I was very conscious of trying to make things not only fit in the gallery, but be complementary to each other. And so that was the primary focus of dealing with it. It's the first time that I've curated a show that I actually had to pick the work and see most of the work before it was ever in the show. So it was a interesting change of pace, but I found it fascinating, and I think that I hope that it worked out well. I haven't had a chance to get to the galleries yet. Hopefully I will, see that the things fit, but I think they all did because I was very conscious of size and space.
Well, I think they look great, and thank you again so much for being the curator of ART214. And so continuing talking about ART214 and how each center had a juror that helped contribute to selecting the exhibition, we're here now with Jackie Forsher. She's actually a native from Kansas, went to Pittsburgh State University in Kansas, but has lived in Dallas longer than she did in Kansas. So Jackie, could you tell us a little bit about how you selected the work, what drew you to certain pieces, and your process of when you select as a work as a juror?
Yes, I can. Actually, the first thing that surprised me was how many pieces were submitted. There were quite a few, so it was a process to go through it all. And one thing I found really interesting was there was immediate pieces that I recognized from certain artists that I knew, and a whole lot of art that I didn't. So it was very surprising to see all of the art from such a variety of different artists and different mediums. So part of the process was staying up late at night and focusing simply on viewing the artwork and trying to look at it on the computer screen, because that's how we viewed it. And there were no names or anything, so we didn't know who it was. And just to look through it and see the different mediums and all the different varieties of what people submitted.
Just a question. So when you were looking at a piece, would you go back and say, I think this is a maybe, or is this a yes, or immediately this is a no?
That's a good question. And one of the overwhelming parts is when you realize how many pieces were submitted and you thought you were catching up, and then you could see that there was a whole lot more to look at. And there was the opportunity to choose and to save it so you could come back to it. And there was a lot of that coming back to it. For me, it was really fairly easy. I instantly liked it for whether composition or color, the structure of the way it was presented. There was a lot of varying factors in it, but for me, it was pretty easy. I either instantly had a yes on it, or there weren't very many that I had maybes on, but there were a few. I did come back to a few maybes I had to reconsider.
Well, thank you again so much for helping us with this project. And ladies and gentlemen, Jackie Forsher, thank you very much again.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jose Vargas. I am a juror in this year's ART214 exhibitions. Jurying the art for this year's ART214 show exhibition, it really wasn't that easy of a process, I feel, because it took some of the jurors about 4 days. And the reason for that is that, well, first of all, the number of pieces. I believe we had over 975 pieces. And that's a lot of hard work to go through. I know myself. I was working on it about maybe 4 hours a day, and it took me about four days to go through it. And it wasn't just so much the number. I mean, the sheer number, it was really a lot, but also the fact that there were so many good pieces. When you look at the artwork, you're going to give it a certain mark, depending on what you feel about it, whether you feel that something is really professional, it's really well executed, or if some of the art pieces were lacking something that you feel, and you feel you need to give it a lower mark. Of course, one of the things that I experienced was it was easy to select pieces that I felt were excellent, but then sometimes you would end up with a lot of really good pieces. So it was real difficult to to judge all of them. Because for example, when I look at the artwork, I think about a lot of things. One of them is being the craftsmanship, the professionalism, but also just the fact that I'm an artist myself. And I'm also installed exhibitions. So I take a lot of things into consideration. And that is, like the finished product. You start, if you look at a piece of artwork, sometimes, not always, but sometimes when the work comes in some cases, they're not really ready to be displayed, or they're not really ready to be installed on the wall. So I take a lot of those things into consideration. And again, there was so many good pieces in that alone was kind of mind-boggling. So, but I was very pleased. I mean, don't get me wrong, I was very, very pleased with the quality of the work in most cases. And now I know what it's like to be a juror, and now I know what it's like to be on the other end. So, I mean, now I understand it's, as I said, it wasn't really an easy process, but it was a good process. It was a good thing for me to go through it, and for other jurors to go through it, because I'm sure that we learned something from it, and I'm glad that, I'm pretty sure that all of us were glad to be part of it. Now, I've had a chance to come out and see some of the exhibitions, to some of the cultural centers, and look at the work that's on the walls, and I'm very pleased with it. And one of the things that I've noticed that I feel that this show is actually improving every year because of the quality of the artwork. And also one of the things that I noticed, when you go to each individual culture center, the culture centers, they have a different feel to them. And you notice that when you walk in there and you look at the artwork, and that's one thing that's interesting to me, and also that I really appreciate it. Now, I know that one of the things that a lot of people are aware of, that what this does, the ART214 show, it allows artists to display their work in cultural centers that maybe they had not been to before, or would not consider going there. And I really like that. I really feel that it's really helping out the community, the cultural centers, and the artists by having this artwork. So if you get a chance to come out and see the shows, please do so. And I'm really, as I said before, I'm really, really glad to be part of this event.
Hi, I'm Ashley, juror from Dallas 214. I wanted to personally thank everyone that submitted their work to this exhibition, as well as congratulate the ones that were chosen. This was extremely hard for me because as an artist, I know that art is not just art. It's not about just painting and creating. It's self-expression. So a lot of this comes from a deep and personal place. So I just really appreciate you guys taking the time to share with us and your community. And I look forward to meeting a lot of you and seeing your work up close and personal. Again, congratulations and thank you.
Thank you again so much for tuning in today for the interview with Jose Vargas, Susan Leckie, and Jackie Forscher, and talking about ART214 at the 5 neighborhood cultural centers. The shows are running through mostly the end of May. You can check out the individual times that are available for appointment. Our galleries are open at this point by appointment only. It's a very easy form to fill out. So please go to dallasculture.org. That's dallasculture.org. Thank you again for tuning in, and please come visit us at the Cultural Center. Thank you so much for tuning in.